Hello, hello, everyone. This is Adam with Psychedelic Insights, and I'm joined by my colleague Jake Slomowitz. Today, we're very excited to be interviewing Richard Meloff and Jay Godfrey of Nushama Wellness. You guys could say hi if you'd like.
Hey
Hi,
guys,
nice to see you guys.
how you
All right.
doing?
We're very excited for this interview. So, without further ado, we're going to just get things going. All right. So, this question is going to be for either of you. You guys can just kind of go for them as you wish. So, what drove both of you to create Nushama Wellness?
That's a great question and one we get a lot. I was in the fashion industry prior to being in what I would call the mood disorder world or psychedelic world. And I'd been to therapy for 3 years, talk therapy every single week for 3 years straight. And while my therapist was really good, I was deeply ego entrenched. And I recognized that I wasn't getting the breakthrough that I had hoped for in kind of classic talk therapy. And in around 2018, I read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, and it was weird because it was a book about drugs. At least I thought it was, and I'd never done any drugs. Um, really, I was.
Wow.
I think I had pot in college a few times, um, and it was fine. But it was, it was so foreign to me. But after I read How to Change Your Mind, I said, wow, this is an interesting thing, and I might be a good patient, or I might be a good participant in some of these clinical trials. Um, and one thing led to another, and I got introduced to plant medicine in August 2019. And after doing a number of journeys with a variety of psychedelic medicines, including psilocybin and MDMA and ayahuasca, my whole world was really shattered in the best way possible. And my fashion business at the time, it was right in the middle of COVID. So it was like, I don't know, June 2020 or something like that. And nobody was buying designer clothes that I was designing. And but here I was, my business was going right into the shit, so to speak, and I felt chosen. It was such an extraordinary feeling to, while the rest of the world was really struggling, and they were double masked and triple masked and nervous, and people were staying home and and locked down, so to speak. I was experienced rebirth and redemption, and really just an amazing story of discovery of self-love and compassion. And then in about June 2020, while the world was really in the thick of COVID, I had said to myself, wow, I need to find a way to bring this work, a combination between kind of the shamanic practices that exists in plant medicine with an above ground experience that is administered by physicians who have proper DEA licensure and supported by psychedelically informed therapists. And I'd known Richard Meloff for, I don't know, about 20 years, sounds like. And he was my brother's college roommate. And after that one particular journey in June 2020, that I felt like this needed to be brought to so many people, especially in light of all the suffering that was happening at the height of COVID. Um, the divine order of the universe played right into my iPhone with Richard Meloff's call 2 days later. And I'll let him take it from here.
Yeah, so I was a senior executive at a Canadian cannabis licensed producer, and we were in the medical and recreational businesses around cannabis. But on the medical side, I was seeing some things that I found troubling, namely the size and scope of the prescriptions that veterans were getting with respect to medical cannabis. There were men and women who'd served in Afghanistan. They had come back. They had seen, terrible things and gone through very traumatic experiences on the battlefield. And the government was allowing them to get prescriptions of between 5 and 10 grams of cannabis a day, which is just a staggering amount.
Yes, it's a lot.
It's a lot of weed.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of weed, and you're basically stoned from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep at night.
Mm.
Now, this is better than self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It is better than suffering, but it's not dealing with the underlying issue. It's really a Band-Aid solution. It's dealing with the symptoms and not with the actual underlying issue. And I also, around this time, was reading How to Change Your Mind. And I called Jay, knowing that he had been going through these unbelievable experiences. I said, I think there's something here that we have to do. And Jay and I both knew that we're not drug discovery people. We're not really technology people. What we did understand was retail. We understood hospitality. We understood the psychospiritual effects of the medicine. And we partnered. And so we decided that the way to get involved in this industry and the way to help people in the here and now was to open a clinic focused on using ketamine to treat mood disorders that would get to the heart of the matter and get to the origin of the trauma so that people could actually experience real relief. We partnered with a doctor who was a critical ingredient, obviously, in this venture, Dr. Stephen Radowitz, and that's how we got rolling, and we were able to move very quickly, such that we were up and running in April of 2021 at a very limited, small way, and by January 2022, we were in the space that we're in now, and we were starting to see patients in earnest, and so things have moved very, very quickly.
So just thank you for the phenomenal answer, and just to get back to your name, so Nushama, so I speak Hebrew, that's one of my first languages.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Adam.
That is like the soul, right? That's
Correct.
what it means in Hebrew. So like, was that the inspiration for the name?
Yeah, it's a play on word. So nushama.com, the traditional spelling with N-E, that was taken. So we had to do a play on word. So we wanted to focus on the soul. So, and we like this idea of a new shaman, right? So it's a combination of the Hebrew word for soul, absolutely, because this is soul work. At its core, these are ailments of the spirit and ailments of the soul, right? And to ignore that is to not really get it, in our view, right? There is a very critical psychospiritual component to all this work, and it was integral to the mission, vision, and values of the organization to respect that. So it's really that word was the origin, Nushama, and also that this is sort of like a new shamanic practice. And so we got sort of a double entendre going.
Gotcha. I like it. I've always heard good things about Nushama. What got me extremely interested about you guys is when the partnership with Awaken Life Science was announced. Can you tell us more about this partnership?
Absolutely. Jay, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. We were, to start with, we always admired, and we continue to admire, Awaken Life Sciences. They put together an exceptional scientific team, really the kings and queens and princes, the royalty of the psychedelic research world, and we were enamored with them. Celia Morgan and her team over there have put together an incredibly efficacious, clinically validated protocol for alcohol use disorder. And they were putting it through the clinical trials. They'd gone through phase 2 with the CARE program, which is a specific ketamine plus 18 hours of mindfulness-based talk therapy program that was really not focused on alcohol abstinence, which rehab is.
Yeah.
And the success rates of rehab are actually in the single digits and extraordinarily expensive. But they had a new idea, or at least a new idea for the recovery world, which is we want to use ketamine as a tool, and the mindfulness-based talk therapy and the workbooks that they had developed to take patients struggling with AUD through their program and really get an understanding of what are the underlying reasons and triggers for the craving for alcohol. And so at the other side of their studies, what they found is when you start to look at alcohol use disorder as a reaction to trauma, as a way of numbing from feelings of upset and disconnection and depression and anxiety, and you start to look at the reasons why, the drivers for why you're reaching for that glass of wine or that margarita or whatever your poison is at that point, then when you put somebody through a psychedelic experience and they can re-experience some of these triggers, but without the classic egoic belief systems, opinions, judgments, you get to see the addiction for what it is. And the results were really astounding.
Yeah.
After 6 months of going through the CARE program, Celia Morgan and her team were able to demonstrate that 86% of the days were abstinent.
Yeah.
It still meant 14% of the days were non-abstinent, but that is 3.5 times more efficacious than anything out there. So when we saw these results, we're like, we have to have this, and we have to administer ketamine using their protocol for our alcohol use disorder patients, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and when I saw those results from Awaken, I'd say like 2 trials really stuck out to me so far since I've been following psychedelic medicine. I mean, all of them seem to be good, but the ones that like blew my mind were the MAPS MDMA and this one with ketamine assisted therapy for alcohol use disorder. And when you look at the results of that phase 2, it's not a stretch to say that this is life-saving like treatment to be abstinent from alcohol 86% of the time when you were probably someone who was drinking every single day. It's just a huge improvement. And when I saw the partnership was announced between you guys and Awaken, that was really exciting. Have you begun to see people coming in for alcohol use disorder already?
Yes, we have, and it's been really, really great to see the results. And in clinical trials, you don't get the individual level participant or patient anecdotes, but when you see people come out of it and come out of the protocol with commentary such as, after seeing what drove me to numb, I now no longer see the need to reach for that drink. So it's not, they don't even look at it as an addiction anymore. They look at it as something that is distracting them or taking them away from their highest self. And whether it's alcohol use disorder or depression or anxiety, this work with psychedelics, this work is fundamentally at its core about reconnecting yourself with the highest version of yourself. And anything that takes you away from that is a distraction, an addiction, and that's what we're working to bring people back to.
Yeah, the alcohol no longer serves them, right? It's not serving them in any meaningful way, and therefore it becomes unnecessary.
Yeah.
And that's really a level of self-awareness and insight that and frankly profundity that these that the treatment allows for and gets to for many of our members.
That's amazing. So, speaking to you guys, I really appreciate how much you attribute the effectiveness of these medicines from the actual experience itself rather than just neurochemistry, neurobiology. Like you guys treat it. And again, we'll get to it in the later questions. You guys incorporate therapy. It's not just administering ketamine and the person stays there 2 hours and they're sent home. There's actual therapy involved. I think that's amazing. There's a big debate going on in the space if people can separate, people could take the trip out of these drugs and still be efficacious. But just speaking with you guys, it seems like this experience with ketamine and viewing your addiction in a different light is really what's driving these results for people. Would you agree?
It's absolutely. I mean, I think I understand why drug discovery people might want to do that, might want to try and remove the journey aspect of it. I get that from a commercial point of view, or from a salesmanship point of view, that it might be less scary, or it might be more easily understood by people, or the FDA might approve it faster. There's all sorts of perhaps, rational reasons why you might think that. But fundamentally, this is a medical experience and a psychospiritual experience. And to remove that aspect of it is to take a lot of the power out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so we firmly believe that the medicine, it's just a tool. It's just a tool. The work is done by our members. We call our patients members, right? The work to set the intention beforehand, then the journey, and then the integration after, to help make sense of what was experienced, so that our members can actually have a meaningful and usable takeaway that they can use immediately to make improvements in their life and in the way they go through their life and the way they navigate, the ups and downs. There is a strong trend in medicine to try and medicate away emotion, or medicate away difficult, hard things. But hard things are what enable us to grow and move forward. If everything was so easy, if it was just slipping into a warm bath, then, just like anything else in life, like how many times, or what are you proud of? The things you did that were hard, or the things that were easy, right? And so these are difficult things. They're hard. They require work, but the rewards are unbelievable. And this constant search of a silver bullet is, I think, it's tantalizing. It's always out there. Lord knows if I could lose 20 pounds by taking a pill, I would, right? But it doesn't exist. And the same for mental health. And people have been promised silver bullets. They were told Prozac was a silver bullet. They were told benzos are silver bullets, and they're just not. They're just not. It requires some effort, some skin in the game, and then you get the rewards for sure.
Thank you for the great response. Yeah. So it seems that many people will opt for ketamine treatment after all their treatments have failed them. With psychedelic therapy being talked about more frequently, have you begun to see anyone seeking out this treatment at Nushama as a first-line treatment? And then to build on that further, can you also walk us through what a psychedelic, like a ketamine therapy session would be like at Nushama?
Sure. So to address, the first part of that question, many of our patients are indeed treatment resistant, meaning that they've had 2 or more interventions that have not been successful. It is our fervent belief that people should not wait for treatment resistance, or should not wait till they've got intractable PTSD, or they should not wait till they've got a condition called alcohol use disorder. That would be a dereliction of our duty, for sure, to wait, to allow people to wait that long. With that said, we are seeing, as the stigma for psychedelics in general thaws on a daily basis, and because of the work that you, Adam, and Jake do, as well as, the media attention towards the legalization of MDMA and psilocybin, the Andrew Huberman podcast on ketamine, these are all things that really help thaw the iceberg. And, it's no longer early adopters or the people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, which is what I colloquially refer to as the treatment resistant. But now we're starting to see people who are starting to say to themselves, you know what? Do I want to go on that SSRI after all I've read? Or do I want to consider ketamine at Nushama as another, as a first line of defense? And as more and more people consider it as that first line of defense, I think society will be better off. And that's not just at Nushama, that's at any place that's properly administering ketamine with preparation, integration, and proper attention made to set and setting. Remind me of the second part of your question again.
It was asking if you could walk us through what a ketamine-assisted therapy session would be like at Nushama.
Yes, our call for mood disorders, exception of alcohol use, which is a 3-journey package of 18 hours of psychotherapy alongside of it, is for mood disorders like depression and anxiety. We have a 6-treatment package, and that is really based on the evidence-based medicine. There's been dozens and dozens of studies around that 6-treatment protocol, and it seems to be the magic number, and that has proven out over the 7,000 journeys that we've administered in the last 18 months. But a typical process would work. Somebody would be interested, either that they've seen an ad for us on Instagram or Facebook, or that they've been referred by their therapist or psychiatrist, and they have a medical intake to start, and that's with our doctor. And the doctor's really there to determine suitability, both from a medical as well as a spiritual perspective. We want to know what medications you're on. We do screen out for schizophrenia, as well as uncontrolled hypertension, as well as certain types of thyroid issues. But assuming none of those medical conditions exist, and assuming in the conversation with the doctor there was no searching for getting high, this is all about the desire and the intention to take a deep look within and do the work, then people will generally, and it works out somewhere between 8 and 9 of every 10 people who go through the intake process will end up cleared. When somebody arrives after they've booked their 6 sessions, at the beginning of each individual session, they come in, they get escorted to a private room, their vitals are taken each and every time. They meet with an integration therapist that they'll be paired with, and these are either licensed therapists or they're coaches with deep knowledge and training in the psychedelic experience. And that time with the therapist is really about setting an intention. And we always say it's okay on your first one to set an intention, simply to surrender to the medicine, to let whatever happens, and to keep an open mind. We do some breath work with them to really make their mind and body relax into the experience. And we remind them some key strategies if things get too hot in the kitchen, so to speak, if things get too challenging. Really about remembering that, you can breathe in and out of your nose. Remember that you can relax into the chair. Remember to listen to the music. And these sound like very simple strategies, but the ego and the monkey mind are such strong weapons that sometimes just reminding somebody to go back to their breath or listen to the music can get them back into their journey and back into flow. The journey under ketamine IV, the drop-in is about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. It's extremely quick. So you'll hit peak experience in just about 2 minutes, and you stay at peak experience for about an hour. Right. And that's when the bag of IV basically goes completely into your bloodstream. And somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes after the journey is complete, you come back to normal consciousness, at which point the integration person sits down with you, asks you if you're ready to talk. In some cases, they're not. Most cases, they are. And integration at Nushama is fundamentally not therapy, as much as it is about understanding that you walked in today one way, you've experienced something hopefully profound and meaningful, and in some cases spiritual. And how do we make sense of that? What is the key takeaway? And that's what the integrational therapist is meant to do. Help you get a key takeaway, and then most importantly, help you determine how this integrates into your daily life. And that happens 6 times throughout our process. Typically, people will do the 6 journeys over the course of 3 weeks, but some people elect to do it over 6.
Understood. Thank you so much for the great response.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious about the music aspect of all of this. Something I personally don't hear talked about as much as I think it should be talked about is the importance of music in all of this, especially during the actual experience. So when someone comes into Nushama, are they listening to music that they want, or is it a playlist that
Hell no.
or is it a playlist that you guys curated, Nushama?
No, we've curated all the playlists, and when, not to sound, I hope this doesn't come out sounding hubris, but after doing 7,000 of these in 18 months, you really get a sense of what people like and what they don't like, what gets them into the journeys and what's distracting. But we have a very, very diverse clientele here. So, we have a lot of, for example, very observant Orthodox Jews that don't want certain voices or female voices in their playlist. So we have a curated playlist for that community. But generally speaking, we've curated the playlist in such a way that at the beginning of the journey, for the time, or what we call the induction, for the time that you're slowly dropping in for the first few minutes, it's really about planting seeds of inspiration and letting people hear some words of encouragement, of inspiration, to really go into their journey, surrendering to the experience. And then for the bulk of the rest of the next hour, these are about sounds and tones and melodies that are really meant to encourage relaxation. And then as you're coming out of it, then it starts to pick up tempo a little bit more and inspire you to look within as you're coming back to your consciousness, or this level of consciousness, I should say, to really be introspective and kind of take inventory of what you've learned.
Awesome. So no vocals for the most part. I know you said specifically maybe if you have someone who's an Orthodox Jew, I know maybe they're not allowed to hear a woman's voice, for example. There's a bunch of reasons behind that I actually learned about in the past through my Hebrew school journey. But for everyone else, vocals mostly no.
Mostly no, but at the very beginning, in the induction, and the very end. In setting up our playlist, we would speak to various people in the industry, and they would holler that you're breaking every cardinal rule about music if there's any vocals. We don't necessarily subscribe to that. We're light on vocals, but some nice words of inspiration in the first 2 minutes of a journey, we feel we've seen more benefit than not.
Awesome. So I'm just going to move on here with, does Nushama Wellness plan to incorporate other psychedelics into their clinics if and when they receive FDA approval?
Yeah, absolutely. The answer is for sure. We're fundamentally molecule agnostic. We just have one molecule to work with at the moment. So as the FDA approves and as best practices come to the fore, we absolutely are excited to incorporate all the tools the FDA is willing to give us. We believe that we are already one of the most trusted places to experience psychedelic medicine, and people are going to have confidence that we're going to responsibly and smartly deploy these new molecules as they come online. So we're eagerly excited and eagerly await them. But in the meantime, we keep forging ahead with what we've got available to us.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind just adding to that. I think when we started in this field, as you guys did, there was this general view that ketamine was a placeholder, that it would be used in clinical practice only to the extent that MDMA and psilocybin were not yet legal. And I think, fortunately, for a lot of reasons, the industry has evolved, and the clinicians and the research has actually evolved, because ketamine's a lovely and very efficacious tool. You don't have to go off of your SSRIs or your benzodiazepines, which is a huge 80% of our patients are on those psychotropic medications and able to do their work with ketamine. And so and there's many conditions that you would be precluded from doing MDMA or psilocybin, certain types of heart conditions, and there's a whole list of them. So we're excited for MDMA. We're excited for psilocybin. I pray to whoever's listening that Ibogaine in some way, shape, or form will be legalized, because I think it is the game changer of all game changers.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope in 5 to 10 years' time, we have a library of psychedelics that we can use, that, one psychedelic might be great for Adam, and a different psychedelic or combination thereof could be better for you, Jake.
Yeah.
I just want to add also, so in regards to that perspective about ketamine being a placeholder kind of psychedelic, so I am guilty of having that perspective up until I actually did IV ketamine session at a clinic in New Jersey. Shout out Ryu Ketamine Clinics. And basically it was one of the most psychedelic experiences I've ever had. And I've done a lot of psychedelics, like a lot of very high doses, very powerful psychedelics as well. And to me, the insight that came out of it is, why aren't more people kind of singing the praises of ketamine right now, as it's medically available? You can get it. And the important thing that Jay mentioned was that you can be on SSRIs, SNRIs, tricyclic antidepressants, and it won't make a difference, because ketamine is an NMDA antagonist. So it's such a wonderful, wonderful psychedelic. It's available now. And I'm just kind of very excited for ketamine to have its moment in the sun. And I think it will come in due time.
Yeah. The industry also likes to look at these psychedelics as if anybody only uses that one.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, what a misnomer that if you go into shamanic practices, they're stacking, heart opening and pathogens with tryptamines, or they're doing, in ceremonial work, they're doing ayahuasca at night and San Pedro in the morning. So there's so many different combinations and permutations that the more the merrier, as long as they're used responsibly.
Yeah, and Jay, like you said, you hope to one day have a whole library that you could choose from, because just following the space and learning more about mental health in general, it's not a one size fits all approach. There's going to be people who respond better to certain psychedelics, what's it called? Sorry, lost my train of thought here. People respond different to each psychedelic, and it's going to be cool to see what the research shows as we get more data to see who does match a certain psychedelic better than someone else, which is really cool. And you mentioned Ibogaine already. I think, I'm following Ibogaine very closely. I think it's going to be tough to get through trials with, the QT prolongation, but I think it's possible. And Adam and I are really following that closely. But so besides MDMA and psilocybin, which are great, you already mentioned Ibogaine. Any other psychedelics you're looking at right now going through clinical trials?
Yeah, I mean, it would hard not to be excited about a lot of different ones, to be honest. It depends on how much time you got. But what excites me, I mean, look, they're doing incredible DMT research through IVs for strokes. I think MDA is something that's almost entirely overlooked as just an extraordinary pathogen. And then there's a lot of Shulgin's library of both phenethylamines or tryptamines that is incredibly exciting. I know that there's a number, I think you guys wrote about this on your website, but there's a number of organizations who are very excited by 4-HO-DIPT, a 2 to 3 hour tryptamine, similar to psilocybin in some ways. And, that has incredible clinical use if you can successfully, and I don't know, the jury's still out, but successfully shorten psilocybin from 6-ish hours to 2 or 3, and it can treat things like postpartum depression or even kind of treatment resistant depression. That's very, very exciting. Or what MindMed has done, where they've got LSD and they add another type of medication that shortens it to 3.5 hours. That, assuming there's no unforeseen events, that's very, very exciting for a lot of people who are suffering from a lot of different things.
Totally. Adam, I know you got some questions already in your head.
No, I'm just like, I love it when people talk about 4-OH-DIPT.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's isoprostane glutarate. So like I actually had the chance not to try 4-HO, but 4-OH-DIPT. It's similar, still short acting, very similar to shrooms. It's a really, really nice psychedelic, and it's gonna be very exciting kind of when this is available. I think is that Mindset that's got the IP on that?
Well,
there's a little bit of a fight.
Yeah, right.
There's a couple of guys fighting over that right now. Mindset, Reunion, and I think Terran came out with some stuff. So it's gonna be interesting.
But even going back to what you mentioned about Shulgin, so like in like, let's say from like some of the Shulgin molecules, you also have very like strongly empathogenic tryptamines like 4-HO -MIPT, 4-HO -MET. Like those are, like, in my opinion, like they're very, very interesting psychedelics. You get a little bit of introspection and it feels like psychedelic MDMA. It's really, really interesting with no come down and no hangover the next day. So what we have in store for us, I guess, as the IP wars kind of starts to mature, is going to be very, very interesting.
That's why we're kind of let them fight it out. We're here as truly as people who care and really have a passion for this work. And the 2C class is also another exciting class of Shulgin's work. And so, you know, I know the psychedelic industry likes to talk about all the, it's like watching The Young and the Restless when you talk about who's got the IP for this, but this person thinks, all we know is that we would like these responsibly administered, and the more options we have, the better. And it is so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, we are the distribution channel for all these future molecules, right? In our view, there's almost no chance that any of these drugs will be taken home by anyone in the near future. They're going to be administered in a clinical environment. And the question is where? And we believe it'll be at Nushama, under proper supervision and with, all the things that are expected to improve outcomes, setting, preparation and integration. So we're excited for everything that's coming down the pike. And when it happens, we will be, among the first to deploy. But in our business, the more the merrier, right? We're really excited, and the more indications that we can treat using different tools at our disposal, the better off everyone will be.
Do you think the therapy protocol will be different for each psychedelic, or will it mostly be like the same kind of like letting go into the experience? I guess I'm overgeneralizing here. Obviously, it's much more complex, but letting go, trying, I guess, not to resist. I
think that covers them all. Letting go. Don't resist any psychedelic or psychedelic. Look, again, it gets back to this IP wars of this person's integration or what they name this. That's kind of not even our purview as much. We believe in our heart of hearts that 10% of this is your diagnosis, 10% of this is the molecule you use, and 80% of the impact is the preparation and the integration.
Wow.
That's not to say that, for Adam, 4-OH-DIPT might not be better for Adam than MDA, and it might not, but I think one thing that needs to be consistent is you need properly trained therapists who can help you make sense and help you integrate these experiences, regardless of the molecule.
Totally.
Agreed.
Wow. So 80%, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
totally. I think I'm with you on that, honestly, for sure. And you guys would know best with having Nushama. Adam, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. So in regards to, so there's a lot of chatter now in regards to MDMA and the upcoming kind of medical legalization and then commercialization and so on. As kind of insiders, or like you guys are running clinics and whatnot, can you guys kind of like forecast on kind of what you would expect the rollout to look like, and if like what you would see might be roadblocks or what might go smoothly? Like just kind of give us your perspective on what to expect from kind of the MDMA rollout.
Rich, you want to take this, or you want me to?
No, go ahead, Jay.
Well, let's first and foremost, I think we all, four of us on this discussion, are excited about any additional molecule coming down the pipeline.
Absolutely.
And my if I was wearing a hat, I would tip it to Rick and all the folks at MAPS for their tireless work over the last 35 years on fighting the good fight. I believe, according to the what Rick said at the conference in Denver in, I think it was June, that his expectation is that the FDA will perhaps reschedule or approve. I think the DEA actually does the rescheduling, but that the FDA will approve MDMA for PTSD some point in June 2024. I've spoken to a variety of sources within the industry which have suggested that it's going to take some time in order to train therapists, but also even if the therapists are trained, to get this medicine into the clinical environment. So I don't expect before 2025, at the very early part, that this will be in clinical use. There are a number of questions, I think, as we all know, that need to be answered before we know what the rollout's going to be. Number one, will insurance cover this or not? And I think that is a key question. And I think the consensus is probably at some point insurance will cover it. But out of the gate, it's hard to imagine the Aetnas, Cignas, Blue Cross, Blue Shields, and the like covering something that in New York City, if you had to price out MDMA for 3 journeys times 8 hours each in clinic times 2 clinicians in the room plus all the therapy that goes around it, we're talking $20,000 to $30,000 in New York City. It might be a little bit less in kind of lower population jurisdictions. So that is a question that needs to be answered. And the other thing I think that is important is what do patients or people who are suffering from PTSD need to do in order to prepare themselves both spiritually and medically for these MDMA journeys that are FDA approved? It is my strong sense that you will absolutely have to go off of your SSRIs.
Yeah.
As everybody did who was on SSRIs did in the MAPS trials. The other kind of challenge, I think, despite the excitement, is I think there's going to not only be financial exclusions before it's before insurance covers it, but they'll actually be, and pharmacological exclusions because of you can't be on your benzos or SSRIs. But I actually think there'll also be medical condition exclusions that we don't necessarily have to deal with in the here and now with ketamine infusions, but certain heart conditions for sure you cannot be on amphetamine based empathogenic psychedelics.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, just how realistic your answer sounds to me. I feel I've had the same thoughts, especially around coming off of SSRIs. Even though some of the people who are not being helped by SSRIs are, I guess, someone, let's say, treatment-resistant depression, they're still on them, and coming off of them can be really difficult. And like you said, with the MAPS PTSD trial, they have to come off SSRIs. So yeah, it's and again, it's not going to be a magic bullet, but it's very exciting, and definitely we're all keeping a close eye on it for sure.
Indeed, look, it's very exciting, and I think one of the most important non-specific takeaways of an approval by the FDA and a partial rescheduling by the DA, because I think it's going to be a partial rescheduling, is the discourse that now we have two psychedelics, or one psychedelic and one psychedelic-like, that are available as an alternative. And you don't need to walk far in New York City or any other city to recognize that people are really, really struggling. So to have two tools available is an extraordinary achievement that Rick should probably win the Nobel Prize for.
I mean, it's incredible what he's done. I mean, just all the risks he took in his career to do this. And what was it, in the 80s he started MAPS?
Yeah, something like 84 or 85. It's crazy.
And to be able to do it through the nonprofit route, at least so far, has been, it's incredible. I have just one last question for you guys. Considering your clinic is very therapy focused, which I think is fantastic, do you think someone doing psychedelic assisted therapy needs to have experienced the medicine themselves to be good at what they do?
Good question.
I think it helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely helps.
I would be more
What's that?
demonstrative. I'd be like, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with Jay on that.
Yeah, like, yeah, you know, like,
We're just,
you know, yeah, like, you know, it, and you can't unsee it, right? So, it is important. Is it? I mean, I know of some very effective therapists who have not, but for the vast majority, I mean, effective therapists who work in the field.
Yes.
But I think it definitely helps a great deal. It definitely gives you, I think, also a lot more credibility with the members themselves. There's a lot of angst and concern for people who've never done it, and to be able to sort of walk them through it and guide them and make sure they're going in calm and you know, clear-eyed about what to expect is enormously helpful and very comforting, obviously, as well, for those who are, you know, experiencing it for the first time. So,
yeah,
you know, Jay is, you know, I'm taking a slightly softer approach, but you know, there's no question that it's a huge help.
Okay, great answer. Sorry, I lied. I do have one more question. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
He does this every interview.
Got one more.
So you guys, you know what you said in the beginning about how sometimes these trips are, especially if you're someone with depression, PTSD, a lot of the times they're going to be challenging. And I think something I fear, you know, I'm actually in a bachelor's of social work program right now. My goal is to be an LCSW. So I follow this also as someone who wants to be a therapist in the future and perhaps maybe even work with these medicines one day. Who knows? What percent of the, if you had to guess, what percent of the people who come in, I guess, have a challenging experience? I'd like to know, because again, what I was going at before is a lot of people might assume by seeing all these articles put out that you just take the psychedelic, it's a magic cure and it's over. But like what you guys said, you have to put in the hard work, and you might be shown, the medicine might show you some things that you've put in the back of your mind for a long time. And maybe it's going to be tough for you to you know, take those on. And that's why it's so important, I think, to do this with therapy. Like, based on what you guys have seen, what percent of the people have a challenging experience? And then I guess, most of the time, do they learn from it?
So our protocol is 6 sessions, right? So I would say everybody within the 6 sessions has at least one, if not more, sort of difficult, challenging journey.
Yeah.
Right. So some are blissful and some are very tough. I think the tough ones are where the most the learning and the growth happens.
Yeah.
For sure. So I mean, I think 100% of our members have at least one tough journey.
Yeah.
It'd be very surprised to find one that didn't. And that's, that's to be expected. And oftentimes not the first journey, right? Typically it's not the first journey that's the toughest one, for whatever reason. But I mean, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everybody goes through, a journey that's like a mirror being held up to their existence. And sometimes, we don't love what we see in the mirror.
Yeah.
Indeed. I think that's a very fair assessment. I was on the phone 2 separate times with 2 separate clinicians who want to come to Nushama as patients, because we do believe in healing the healers, and we do believe that in order for them to understand this medicine, they need to try it and heal themselves first so that they could be the best. But what I've said to both of them, I'll say to you guys, which is your journeys. It's very difficult to describe the ineffable, and it's very difficult to describe a mystical experience, because they can be very mystical, especially with ketamine, actually. But journeys generally fall into one of 2 categories, if I was forced to put them into one of 2 categories. What Richard talked about, which is they either A, hold a mirror right up to yourself and you get to see all your shit, and it's uncomfortable, and you get to see your patterns and your shadows, and your bad behaviors and your disrespect of others and your bad habits, and it's not fun, but it's not as bad as if you saw them with your ego intact. So there's a benefit of seeing it in the absence of your ego. You attach less meaning to it, you judge it less, but they still can be challenging experiences. And then the other main category that people fall into is where you could be. And those are the ones where people with treatment-resistant depression who've got constant rumination, where the noise goes off. And there is that beautiful silence where it's, that's nice. I could get used to this. And that is a beautiful, blissful experience that creates muscle memory for them, and they can always go back to it without the medicine.
Wow.
I just want to add this too, so that at the end of the day, a good trip or a bad trip can turn into one of the most profound psychedelic experiences of your life. And I think a lot of that will also boil down to how you integrate the experience. And that is so important. With the proper integration, the scariest psychedelic trip you've ever had in your life can turn into the most profound, life-changing moment into your entire life. And that's why it's so important also to do to have these experiences with obviously a set and have like a proper, like doing it at a clinic and having professionals there. That's what it's all about. So you get kind of protected from like trauma from a bad experience, where it can actually turn into something extremely life-changing and beautiful due to the integration.
Absolutely.
Adam, I would only quibble with the word bad. I would substitute that for tough or challenging.
Tough, I think that's better. My apologies. Yeah,
no. I just think that these are tough. These are tough experiences. They're difficult experiences, but they're not fundamentally bad, right? They're just, they may be unpleasant, uncomfortable, but that is, we grow in our discomfort, right? That is, and you said it exactly right. That is where growth happens through those challenging experiences.
And that's what makes all this so exciting. This is why I got so excited about just hearing about the research, like maybe 2.5 years ago, of what was going on. Is that for the first time in mental health, at least it seems like, obviously therapy, the goal is to get to the root cause, but sometimes, a lot of the times with psychedelics, it could get you there faster. It seems like this is the first time in the medical world that we're really trying to get to the root causes of what is making people suffer. And that's just what's so exciting about all this. And it's great to be able to talk to you guys and hear about the work Nushama is doing to do this type of work and help people get to the root causes. It's great.
Yeah, just want to acknowledge you guys also. You seem very, very passionate about the work you're doing, and that always like resonates significantly within me, especially when you're working with psychedelics in general, because people care a lot about this medicine and how important it is. So I just want to
Absolutely.
acknowledge you guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show.